Living a Healthy Lifestyle show with your favorite holistic health coach, Carrie Kay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Living a Healthy Lifestyle show with your favorite holistic health coach, Carrie Kay. And I would like to introduce my guest today. He's going to talk about debt. So many people struggle with debt, and he is helping people as a former educator turned financial coach on a mission to help Americans break free from debt and build lasting wealth. Welcome to the show today. Thank you.
Hello, Carrie Kay.
Andrew, how are
Yeah, no,
you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. So I'm going to just focus on the questions that you gave me. They're so good. So many people feel trapped by debt. I know I've been there. What do you
Mhm.
believe are the biggest lies that we have been told and how it's different from traditional budgeting? Or, whoops, I jumped to the other one. We've been told about money and how to manage it.
Do we want to start with the lies or budgeting? I'm not sure which.
Lies. Because I
Okay,
my eyeglasses went to the other one,
gotcha. No,
the other question.
all
So
good. Yeah, I honestly think that there's been a lot of lies shared to the American people. That's generally the people that I'm talking to are just folks here in America. Um, And I want to make a clear distinction here. I do not think that bankers, as people, are evil people. I do think that the banking industry is not set up to benefit regular Americans. They are in it. They are a profit business. They are in it to make a profit, and they do a very, very good job of that through a variety of ways. But I think the lies that we have been sold, amongst many of them, is one that the banks are set up for your benefit, and that is just not that is not true. And again, not bankers as people, just the banking system themselves. Same with credit card systems. I think we would all. I don't think that's a stretch for anybody to think that credit cards were really never created to help us. I've actually done some research in the last little bit. The idea of buying on credit is a fairly new thing and very American thing. That's not something that other countries are as in love with, shall we say. And just go back a couple generations, buying on credit was not a thing, and if it was looked down upon. So in a very short amount of time, we as Americans have just bought into this idea that it's okay to buy on credit. We're just going to live in debt. That is the reality, and that it's all going to work out. And actually, I'll throw an image up here later if it makes sense. But the idea of mortgage, the term mortgage is actually comes from a French term, mort, meaning death. Gage is like a pledge, so it's like a death pledge. Um, I don't think that many newlywed couples are realizing that they are signing a death pledge when they do those documents to get their dream home. So, anyways, I'm not even sure where to start. I realize I hit on a couple different things, but there's just a lot of lies going on, and I think even maybe more important than the lies that have been sold to us is the miseducation, right? There's not been
yes.
financial literacy, right? There's not been this idea of training up kids in knowing what to look for and what to steer clear of. So that's my hope as a former educator, like you mentioned, is to just kind of peel back some layers and do a better job of educating, and then people can make good educated decisions for their benefit.
Wow, Andrew, you said that's so good. And so then you describe your system as a financial GPS. I love that. Let's
Mm-hmm.
use our GPS. God is our GPS.
Exactly.
What does that mean, and how is it different from traditional budgeting or debt payoff methods?
Right. So I'm going to bring up an image here. I'm actually going to go off camera here just so you guys can see this nice and large here.
Okay.
Um, again, if you're not seeing this, I'll try to explain this for maybe those that are listening, but hopefully most people can see this. The idea is that the banks would have you go on this long, twisty, windy road over 30 plus years to pay off your mortgage, right? We are sold. Let me just throw this up here. You are sold on the APR, which everyone knows the APR is the annual percentage rate, but that is not what banks charge you on. The banks charge you on what is called the TIP, total interest percentage. And while the APR might be quote unquote good at 3 to 6%, many times the tip is between 80 and 120%. So I bring that up just to as we go through and look at this map right here, or this little diagram. The banks are going to have you take as long as possible on this twisty, windy road because they know the longer it takes for you to pay off your debt, your mortgage, your credit cards, whatever the case is, the more money they are getting along the process. Okay, that's the bad part. The good part is that there is a faster way, a mathematical way to cut that in half or a third just by making strategic payments that can shorten that, sometimes as little as 5 to 7 years, a lot of times, between 10 and 15 years, even half the time. Can you imagine being paying off your mortgage in half of the time? That would be incredible. And that's going to put hundreds of thousands of dollars back in people's pockets. So that is the short version of this idea of a financial GPS is that we're going to show you the most efficient way to pay off your debt, not taking you on this long, twisty, windy road. And another um, analogy that works well with the GPS is when life happens, right? When a car breaks down or when something happens at the house that you're going to have to pay for, like a GPS, it's going to reroute you. It may take a little bit longer, but it's still going to reroute you to the most efficient way to get things paid off. So it might move from 5 to 7 years to 6 to 8, right? But instead of that, just derailing your plans and you start saving and you don't start, paying off your debt strategically, we can show you the fastest way to get debt free, and that's what our financial GPS system is all about.
I love that. You know how
Isn't that
many
cool?
people this is going to help?
I believe it. I believe
Wow.
it. Very, very passionate about this.
And God must have really inspired you to help a whole lot of people, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, from a biblical perspective, why is debt such a spiritual issue as much as a financial one?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously this is, directed towards Christian, which for what it's worth, my background is not background, my upbringing is as a Christian. I'm now a um, deacon at our church and the worship leader at our church here. So I'm very much looking at this through the lens of how does this help Christians? How does this align with biblical principles for what it's worth? And we can talk later on if needs be about some webinars that I have coming up talking about the biblical aspect of debt and financial freedom. But that we can wait on that. But to answer your question, I think the Bible is very, very clear that we are not to be in debt. We are to be lenders, but not debtors, right? When you are in debt to somebody, and I forget where the scripture's at, but it's like the only debt that we should owe people is to love them, right? Is to love them the way God loves them, not to owe them money. We've heard the thing about not lending money to your friends, right? Because that puts enmity between the two of you. So there's so many scriptures talking about the trap and the bondage, really, right? The bondage of debt and how that is not what God wants you to do. And when you are living in the bondage of debt, you are not free to make to bless other people. I mean, I understand that there's more to life than money. I understand that, and I ascribe to that as well. However, money does allow you to do things, and if you are so wrapped up in debt that you can't give the way that you want, you can't bless others, you can't give to ministries, that's not how God would want you to do, right? So he wants you
Oh,
to be a good
no.
steward, right? Be a good steward of that one, and he will double that. And then when you get the three, he'll double that as well, right? So I'm a strong believer that God will bless you when you are a good steward. And one of the biggest stewardship things as far as money goes is not to be in debt. And if you are, get out of debt as quickly as possible, which the graphic again showed you how we can do that much faster.
I'm so happy to say I'm not in debt.
Good
Just
for
50,
you.
just like $1,500. So yeah, it's really I'm very blessed, but I've worked really
Absolutely.
hard to get there.
It's not,
So
yep.
what do most people get wrong when trying to pay off their debt, and how does that approach solve that?
Mm, right. I think that there's again, it kind of goes back to that long path right here. The myth of the minimum payment needs to be dispelled real quick. Okay, they are getting a little bit better about being a little bit more honest when it comes to that. If you read the bottom of your credit card statement, it will say if you continue on paying this minimum payment of your $5,000 credit card, it's going to take you 15 years. Like no one wants to be paying on a credit card for 15 years, right? So
I
this idea
know.
of a minimum payment is an absolute trap, and we need to get free of that as quickly as possible. Again, I think The part that's so difficult about this is that, generally speaking, right, when people hear this message, they're like, well, now I'm so far in debt. There's just no hope, right? There's no way that we're going to get out of this. And that's what I guess is laid on my heart, is to provide people hope. There is a better way. Okay. You don't gain 50 pounds overnight. You're not going to lose 50 pounds overnight, right? You don't get into debt's a little bit different, right? Because you can sign a paper and just be that fast in debt. But unfortunately, getting out of debt does take some time. However, if we can shrink that timeline and put more money back in your pocket to start investing, to start giving to ministries that you care about, I know that that's what God would want us to do with our being good stewards. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And what are some small but powerful habits that someone listening today can start doing to build their wealth and get out of debt faster?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a shameless plug here. A good buddy of mine, and I just started a podcast. It's called the Money DNA Podcast. You can find it on YouTube, and we talk about that. Like, what are some practical steps? Because money is a very, very large topic, right? This is not something we can fit into a half hour set little time at this point, right? So some very, very simple ones just right out of the bat, and it's one that we started with in our podcast, is just understand what a budget is. You don't have to be, you don't have to be the nerd with the little pocket calendar, but there are things that you need to do to be mindful and smart with your money. Budgeting is one of those, just tracking your expenses. There's some different ways to do that. Um, I mean, then it comes down to income versus expenses, right? How can you raise your income and lower your expenses? I realize that sounds so simple, but there are practical ways to do that, right? You can get a side hustle, you can get a little side gig right there where that can kind of add into that, right? So maybe you're adding in some more money to that debt. And again, there's lots of different specific strategies out there. There's the snowball, there's the avalanche, right? There's none of those are actually better to say all of those are good. Okay. Those are good things. Snowball and avalanche will maybe shave a year or two off. This idea of the financial GPS is mathematical with like 4 million lines of code. It's not going to half your mortgage. It's just not, right? So this is good. This is better than nothing. But if you really want an advanced system that's helped thousands of people over the last 20 years, this is a number that is worth mentioning here. $2.7 billion. $2.7 billion in interest that our financial GPS system has helped to pay off over the last 20 years. So snowball is great. This is going to get you there a lot faster. So hopefully those are just a couple, very strategic ways that you can start doing that. Again, check out the podcast if you want some more information. Dale and I have a great time kind of breaking those down for you.
Wow. And for our listeners who are curious about the system that you teach, what is the first step they can take and how can they connect with you?
Yeah. So the first step to meet with me, or first step to get started, better to say, is to meet with me. So there's a couple different ways to do that. This is a new little fun app that I just got started on called Owl. That's one way to do that. If you search Owl in the App Store, you can enter Empower and get $10 in free credit. Basically, it's $1 for 10 minutes of time, right? So that's one way to do that. If you're interested and want to network and find other people kind of in your similar vein, that's a great way to do that. And a more traditional way, if you would like to, you can just text me 970-739-2229. And then my email is empower wealth solutions with an S at Gmail. So any one of those three, we can connect and have a conversation. And really what it's going to boil down to is understanding where you're at, what makes the most sense for you. You have my word as a follower of Christ that I will never suggest something that is not what I truly believe in my heart that would be best for you. If we find out that the financial GPS system is not a best fit for you, then I'm going to give you some other ideas for that. But for most people, this is going to save half of your time on debt payoff and hundreds of thousands of dollars for most people. So if you fall into that, then we can definitely help you.
Wow, I am blown away by everything that I learned today. That's so awesome. So I was just going to ask, is there a particular client that you have helped that you can talk about that their lives were just totally transformed by this?
Absolutely. So I've got a wonderful couple, another Christian couple here in town. I live in Southwest Colorado, that recently signed on, and they are in their 60s and they just bought a house. That may not sound like a great decision, but people do this all the time. They are not unique in that, right? Of buying houses later in life just because they wanted to move into their dream house or be closer to grandkids or whatever the case is. For this awesome couple, we were able with our financial GPS to save them. Well, let's start right here. Let's start with time, right? So it's really about how much can we save them in time and how much can we save them in money. So their 30-year mortgage went down to 6.4 years. So what is that?
Wow.
25 years of time. We were able to save them 25 years of time. And then conservatively, we are $185,000 back in their pocket, not in the bank's pocket. So that's just one example, and that's a very recent one that I've helped with.
Wow. And how long have you been doing this for
So
people?
I'm a fast learner, so I've been excited about this for a while, but the last 2 months has really been when I've dove into this, better to say, just headlong and whatever. Another just success story, just kind of along these same lines. This is my good friends, right? We're just going to call them my friends, but just for me and my wife, so Crystal and I, our time. So we went from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year, and our money saved rather, again, conservatively is $125,000. And that's a brand new mortgage we took from 30 years all the way down to 15 years and saving us $125,000, which that goes a long ways. We've got two young boys that are, moving into their next phase of life. So, imagine the travel that we can do or the education we can pay for, the cars that we're going to need to buy for them and this kind of stuff. So, $125,000. And again, that time savings is maybe even more impactful. So very, very good stuff.
And you talked about God and his plan and what his plan was for us to not be in debt. I just think that is so good and that we just really need to focus on helping as many people as we can not to be in debt.
Correct.
So, what are your last words that you can give everybody on what would you say to somebody that is like, well, we have all these debt programs out
Right.
there. What sets yours different than others?
Let me pull this up here, and I'll answer your question as quickly as I can here. I know we're short on time here, but let me just give you a brief answer to that. So this, I would say, is probably the reason that I would lean into what we can offer as opposed to, and I'm not an expert on other systems. I just know our system is phenomenal. So 20 years in the business, right? So if you're in the financial space and you are a bad actor, you're not going to last 20 years. There's no way in America that companies in financial space will last 20 years. It just doesn't happen. Okay. So we're 20 years old, a 96% approval rating on Trustpilot, and A plus Better Business Bureau rating. So that in and of itself, I think, should speak to the power of this and the legitimacy. I know a lot of people when they see these kind of numbers, they're like, "Oh, it's got to be a hoax or it's a scam or this and that." I don't know what else to tell you, right? So I would say as a parting comment, just come in with an open mind. Reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. You have my word. I will not direct you in any way that is not beneficial to you. If we find out at the end of our 10-15 minute conversation that this is not a good fit, then I will try to do my best to speak value into you and give you some other ideas. But again, for most people, this is a phenomenal fit. Let me just throw this out here. This one's going to blow your mind at this point. Are we good on time, Carrie K? I don't want to go over time here.
Yeah,
Okay. Um,
in about
uh,
5 minutes.
okay, gotcha. So this is the average debt load of a Gen X person, right? Which we're gonna have, and I've got four different examples of this, all the way from millennial all the way up to baby boomers. But this is about the average mortgage, loan payment, credit card, this kind of stuff. So that ends up being about $2,500 at the end of the month with discretionary income. Using those numbers, this is what the financial GPS system can do for them. Okay. So rather than taking 30 plus years and 73% plus interest, 6.4 years, $432,000. So you're still paying interest, right? But nowhere close to this. And you're saving time. The other one that just bakes people's noodles is that for these last 24 years, right? The 24 years, rather than paying the banks, right? Rather than paying the banks, if you start paying yourself, you're going to end up with over $1 million in the bank because you are investing in yourself, not in the bank. So that's why you should talk to me.
Wow, that was amazing. Holy cow. Yeah, everybody needs to use this plan. This is Empower Wealth Solutions is a good thing, Andy.
I
I
agree. I
yeah.
agree. So I'm going to
And
throw that up there with my contact information. Yes, please reach out again. You have my word that I will not steer you astray. If this is a good fit, we'll move forward, and if not, then we'll part as friends. And I wish you the best. But it's definitely worth, if half of your mortgage and hundreds of thousands of dollars are not worth a 10-minute call, I don't really know what is.
oh wow, yeah. Well, real quick, like I just wanted to ask you in the few minutes that we have left, about your podcast
Yeah.
and how people can get connected again, and just give us a little bit of a, you know, an example on what you're teaching in your podcast.
Yeah, let me pull up a couple things here. I realize we don't have a lot of time here, but
4 minutes, just 4 minutes.
okay, yeah, we're good. So it's called Money D and A. So it stands for Dale and Andy. Dale's a wonderful financial advisor up in Canada. He and I have just always really hit it off, and we have a great time just kind of chatting back and forth. Let me pull up a couple ideas or examples, better to say, of what we've done. So here's our first episode. We always break things down into three main questions. So first big topic was why listen to us? Who are we? What are we doing? What should you expect? Let me get a better one here. So I think this one is about budgeting. Okay, why do you budget? How do I start? How can I make it easier? Right? And then we start talking about giving every dollar a job. That's a financial, like a budgeting term, giving every dollar a job. The idea of who is your money working for? Often it's not ourselves, it's working for the bank. So, how can we make our money work for ourselves? So, that's just an idea. We are 4 episodes in, lots more to come. So, check us out on YouTube, Money DNA podcast. And I'll try to put our links in with this one as well to make it easier for you to find us.
Well, I have definitely learned a lot today, and I'm so excited to share this with our viewers. How God is changing lives through this program. I'm sure this is huge because I was also in debt myself for a great many years after, well, before my husband passed away. We filed bankruptcy, and then we turned around and they said, "Oh, your husband's gone now, so you owe us money."
Mm,
Like, what? I just
wow.
filed bankruptcy. What's wrong with this system?
Oh,
And
goodness.
yeah, so I ended up having to pray and ask God. And God was like, go to the courts and tell them
Mm,
that this lawyer's trying to get extra money from you,
it's
and
terrible.
go to the courts and tell them what's going on and write us a check for 23,000. I did.
Goodness
They
gracious.
sent it into all the people I owed money, and
Hmm.
I got that money back a year later.
Wow.
A year later, I got a check for
Phenomenal.
the same amount. I'm like, so that was God right there,
For
just
sure.
in obedience to me learning more about my money. So
Mhm.
this has been just a phenomenal time together, Andy. I cannot wait to get this information out to people.
You as
You
well.
should pray about a series because when you have time, because
Hmm.
this is so vital to get this
Yeah.
information to people. It's life saving.
Yeah.
It's marriage saving.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
know,
for what it's worth. A couple of my friends that have done this longer, they use this as part of their marriage ministry. They say, what do people argue about and get divorced about? Finances and communication. And that's the two things that they talk about.
money. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. My ex is like, if you don't make any more money, I'm leaving you. I'm like, well, see you later.
Right. Right.
you know,
Yep.
but I'm an entrepreneur, so
There you
well,
go. You'll
thank
land
you.
on your feet. You bet.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, and all of our viewers. If you want to get with Andy, scan that for the link. Go to the Money DNA podcast or DA podcast. I'm definitely going to be looking into that myself. And for all you guys out there that feel like you cannot get out of debt,
Mm,
well, Andy's got the solution. So
right.
thank you so much for joining us today on Living a Healthy Lifestyle Show. This is your favorite holistic health coach, Carrie K. God bless.